Hey, happy Sunday. This is PFG Live, the podcast that asks if you're not flat, you're not where it's at. Yes, that wasn't a question. Uh, Hello to everybody that was in the Discord and is checking in. CJ Stevens is checking in on YouTube with 71 degrees and very sunny in East Tennessee. Welcome aboard, sir. DBS jumped in with the windsock, and you won the internet today. Tuck says it's 46 Fahrenheit and rainy in the Buffalo, New York. Michael Juan says it's 23 Science and cloudy in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Evil's made up his own METAR, but basically it's adequate. DBX reports at the White Plains Airport, winds are variable at 4 knots. Visibility 10 miles, sky broken 12,000, temperature 182.09, temperature altimeter 2984. Thank you, sir. Dale from WidgetWorks is checking in, saying that the weather is 15 dungarees, science, and sunny from my mother's house in northern Alberta, Canuckistan. Welcome, sir. Nice to see you. Currently here in southern New Hampshire, it's 51 degrees. 71% relative humidity. Not to be confused with the Manchester Airport, which is reporting winds calm, visibility 10 miles, light rain, few clouds at 500, overcast at 6,000, temperature 09, dew point 06, altimeter 2990. And the remarks are that the rain began 22 minutes after the hour. And that's what you need to know. Well, welcome. Justin P. is checking in at 55 degrees Fahrenheit and clear blue skies in Florence, Montana. Welcome aboard from Montana. Unix Carbide is checking in with 71 degrees Fahrenheit with every child under 9 having a cold in the Lower East Side, Williamsburg, Brooklyn, New York City, New York, United States of America. Sorry to hear about the kids with the cold. Hope they all get cured all at once. So this is the PFG Live, and we're going to have some fun today, which is unusual because we never have fun. And I had an interesting week. I will report on that. We have the PFG Stones report, which is that everything is up to date. Paul Morley is in the Discord. Welcome aboard, along with Dale and Evils and Tucker and Josh and DBX, Unix Carbide, Michael Juan, AJF, Justin P, and Bill Olney. If you use Discord, but you don't know about our Discord, head on over to pfg.gg/links and rummage around in this big unorganized box of links, and you'll find a link to our Discord. Josh did the most expedient thing ever and posted a picture of his weather station. He says it's 40%. Is that relative humidity? Yeah, 15.4 degrees science. And there's a whole bunch of other numbers there too, in the southern Manitoba. We're getting around Canada today, folks. Welcome aboard. So, fun week. I did a lot of fusioning this week. Autodesk Fusion had my face for a lot of this week because I'm trying to finish that project. Yes, you know who you are. I'm trying to finish this project and get it out the door, and it's coming along quite well. And one of the things I posted, oh, hang on. Paul Morley says, hey, everyone, Dallas, Texas, and 95 Fahrenheit today. 95. And he says, go SpaceX. The catch heard round the world. We'll talk about that today. That was pretty cool. If you haven't seen the video of the SpaceX, what is the name of the big rocket? It fell out of my left ear. But it not only did it return, the Starship not only returned, but it was caught by 2 giant chopsticks. And it is well worth looking up the video on your favorite video provider. There it is. DBX gives us a YouTube link in the chat. Thank you, sir. As part of this project that I'm working on, let's see if I can get rid of my face there. I made the world's smallest 3D printed parts that I've ever made for a project. But these are spacers that are going inside of an RFE kind of project, and they're teeny, but they came out great on my resin printer, a FormLabs Form 4. Bill Olney says, in Rome, New York, it's rainy and 48. Hello, Rome. Rome is also home of Rome Air Force Base, which I believe now hosts the Air Force Research Labs. Is that correct, Bill? You can tune me in on that. Yep. Yeah, the Air Force Research Labs is well aware of me. You can take that exactly however you wish. Lots of fusioning this week. Lots of yelling at Fusion, although pretty good results. I have a wish list for Fusion. So if you're a Fusion guy, if you work for Autodesk, get your pencil out. I want a you know what I mean button. So sometimes we'll have a zillion holes on a surface, and you'll go over and counterbore the hole and chamfer the top of it and do that stuff. And then you want to say, oh, by the way, do this to everything on this surface. Now, there may be a way to do that, and maybe somebody needs to educate me, but that would be pretty cool. And with the advent of, I hate to use the term because it makes me crazy, but AI, it would be neat to be able to give a text description of what you're trying to do and have it say, oh, do you mean this? And try it out. And if you don't like it, you could undo it. But I'm dealing with many, many details on this very, when you see this thing finished, you'll say, boy, that's really simple. It's like, yeah, there's about 200 simple things in it. So anyway, I would like that. Please, Autodesk, get on that right away, okay? Call me. We'll talk. Also this week, we started at the beginning of the week, we started an experiment, which we will be talking about today, on ways to store your filament. Tucker says we need to make VI, virtual intelligence, a more acceptable term instead of AI, artificial intelligence. I'm all with you, except for the fact that the software guys will yell at you because VI is the name of an editor. I'm sure DBX is going to jump in and give me an evils and Unix Carbide. Evil says everybody uses VIM these days. I don't even want to know the difference. But okay. I just want the I. Can we just have more I? More intelligence and leave it at that? It could be artificial. It could be liquid based. I don't care. Unix Carbide just typed software into the chat, and I don't even know what he said. So we might as well just jump into this. CJ Stevens says, I prefer Nano over Vim. They're going to start arguing. Now they're going to start arguing. All the software guys are going to argue on their keyboards, which is totally normal for them. Let us move on. I have to give you the PFG Stones report. All orders have been filled, and one order is waiting to be filled. It'll go out Monday. So the current status is we have 4-inch PFG Stones getting finished up tonight, and they'll be ready for Monday. And then the spreadsheet says that I may sleep. So that's what's happening. So a week ago, we started an experiment. This experiment was part of the long debate on ways to keep our filament dry in our 3D printers. And as you know, my unfounded statement is that 80% of all 3D printing problems is because you have wet filament. Unix Carbide says, how about a new weekly section this week in funny AI failures? No. So a week ago, we came up with a bunch of containers to hold your filament to keep it dry, and we started testing it. Why did this start? This started because a while back, when I first made the argument that you need to keep your filament dry, I discovered these Sterilite containers. Now, these Sterilite containers have this lovely red gasket, and I found them on Amazon, and they weren't tremendously expensive. We just got a price on Amazon of $8 a piece. I think I paid less, but when I first started using them, but they're $8 a piece. Now, they are made from a plastic. Let's see if I can get you this plastic. Which is, yeah, there it is. Polypropylene. So there's your, there's the symbol, PP, polypropylene. And we said, hey, this is great. So you could put your filament in the Sterilite container. You could put your desiccant in there. We even came up with these $3 hygrometers, which we later deprecated. And life was good. We were keeping our filament dry. There's only one problem. I found myself running around and observing that the humidity inside of these sealed containers was going up a lot sooner than I wish it had. Like maybe in 2 months, it was back to the ambient humidity. I was unhappy, but I didn't know a way to solve it except for running around and putting new desiccant in. So having a way to dry your filament is critical. I have this beautiful big surplus lab oven that I bought. High airflow lab oven, goes up to 450 degrees max, so it's not good for heat treating or anything. Awesome for drying filament. So I have probably 20 of these Sterilite containers, and it was not going well. Then you may recall last week we talked about this paper that I discovered from the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory called Water Vapor Permeation in Plastics, in which we learned some things. We learned that water really wants to march right through plastics. Almost as good as helium. Can you believe it? So the bottom line of that paper was, oh, you want to keep something dry? Metal or glass, period. So Doug sent me my friend Doug Chin, who makes the best bagels in the world, by the way. He sends me this photo yesterday. So he's had this glass enclosed chamber for filament running now for a couple months or a few months. And he has held the record at about 2% relative humidity in his filament chamber. So he sends me a picture. He says, I figured it was time to recharge the desiccant in my filament chamber. So I did. And now this is my number. And he sends me a picture of his hygrometer, and it's sitting at 0%. Now I'm sure there's an error bar there, but this is the Sensorion sensor, the one we like, and this is because his chamber is made out of glass. So we started looking at candidates for testing, and we started our test. So there in the picture there is the test that we currently have running. And the articles we have are the 5-gallon pail with the lid and the seal around it, the steel band. We have a 30 caliber ammo can. We have the Sterilite container. We have 2 containers that Doug discovered on AliExpress, and he kind of liked them, so he bought some. It had it was more efficient for a single roll of filament. He then took a second one of those and covered it in aluminum tape as an experiment. Then we have these aluminized mylar bags, which are sold for food storage. And more on that in a minute. And finally, we have the control item, which is the desiccants we're using for the experiment with no container. And that experiment started a little more than a week ago, or about a week ago, and we've been monitoring the absorption of water into the desiccants by weighing the desiccants. So I have a triple beam balance, and the triple beam balance is a lab scale, and it has a resolution of 0.1 grams, which is pretty good. Not as crazy good as it could be if we spent a lot more money, but it's not bad. So without further mucking about, let's take a look at the results. So here's a spreadsheet. This is a Google sheet. Now, I have to warn you, these numbers are raw data, and there's some corrections that have to be made. So don't draw too many conclusions from this. This is the first data point, okay? Remember, if you give me a data point, I can draw a curve through it. So I will point you first to the no container, the control item, and over a period of 9 days, this is 9 days, it gained, it went from 342 grams to 371 grams. It gained 29 grams over that period, which is pretty amazing. And then if we look down, let's see, I'm going to just change. No, I'll leave it alone. If we look down the list, the next largest number is the 5-gallon pail with the lid at 1.7 grams. I will explain this in a second. The next largest number is the Sterilite container at 1.1 grams increase. The next one is the 4-liter container from Doug in foil at 0.5, the 4-liter container from Doug not in foil at 0.3, and then finally the ammo can at 0.3, and the 2.5 gallon Mylar bag at 0.1 grams change in desiccant weight. So the desiccant is in these two pouches. And for reasons that are not important, I had an extraordinary number of them because they came in some equipment that I purchased. Evils, I successfully upset Evils with my date notation. You're welcome. So before you jump to too many conclusions on this data, I think there's a couple of things to note. The container that you're measuring in, when you seal the container at the beginning of the test, there is an amount of air in the container, and there's an amount of moisture. We actually don't care about the initial amount of moisture. We care about the accumulation of moisture over time. So you have to be a little careful. So the fact that the largest container, the largest volume of air that we trapped, the 5-gallon pail, shows up with a 1.7 gram change in weight is not necessarily a damning number. And that's an all, except for the gasket, it's a metal pail. So we have to correct for that. We haven't done that yet because there's a bunch of math I have to do, and Doug's done it before, so I'm going to get his help. We're going to get that done. However, the 0.1 gram change is not to be scoffed at because that's real, and that's the 2.5 gram. 2.5 gallon Mylar bag. Pretty impressive. So the knee-jerk reaction here is that the Sterilite gained 1.1 grams, and the Mylar bag gained 0.1 grams, and that was pretty impressive. So these are preliminary numbers. We'll again, as we gather more data, we'll share it with you. But let me show you one of the reasons I'm excited. The Sterilite containers currently cost $8. Okay. The Mylar bags, which I also purchased on Amazon, I will get links in the links page. I don't think it's there yet. Come out to about $1.30 a piece, significantly cheaper. You can store large quantity of these in a very small space, and they are resealable and reusable a large number of times. Paul Morley asks the correct question, which I was about to talk about. He says, did you collapse the Mylar bag before closing? Did it have considerably less volume of initial air? And the answer is, I didn't go crazy in evacuating the air, but just by its nature, yes, it had less air in it than 2.5 gallons. And that is another thing that should not be missed, is that the flexible container, you can squish out the unwanted air. But really, in the limit, what we care about is not the volume of air in there, but the long-term crossing of moisture through that barrier. So we have to extract that out of the data, and we'll get that to you. So the price performance ratio, I mean, this is right out of the gate. The price performance ratio for these Mylar bags is stunningly good, and they're very rugged. So you can't see it from the pictures, but the Mylar bags are very thick and rugged compared to the Mylar bags which come on some of your filaments. So here's a bag that came on some of my bamboo filaments. I don't remember which one this was. This is very similar, okay? And if you'll notice, the expensive bamboo filaments are coming in these bags. The cheap ones are not. They're coming in the clear plastic. And what we're learning is that those clear plastic bags are not doing a good job of keeping the moisture out, but these aluminized Mylar bags are. I think if bamboo went to 100% aluminized Mylar bags for selling their filament, that would be a huge win, okay? Also, which we talked about last week, bamboo is coming out with their HF high flow filaments, and they're starting to tell people you need to dry this filament before you use it. And I think they're effecting a cultural change more than anything, right? Yeah, they're putting some herbs and spices into the filament, but they're starting to slowly get people to dry their filament. Well, if you dry a filament, you better have a way to keep it dry. And these aluminized Mylar bags are a clear win. And I know that Unix Carbide was all excited because he needed a solution for storage, and this is a very space-efficient solution. So more data to follow. Again, preliminary results. I don't think I'm going to have any big surprises with the aluminized Mylar, but I will tell you that the Mylar bags from bamboo are thinner than these Mylar bags I bought for food storage. Not only that, but I picked up this bag, and I noticed a bunch. I don't think you can see it on the camera. Now, you won't be able to see it on the camera, but I noticed some holes in it. So the fact that they're thin and probably less expensive, they developed some holes. So for $1.30, you can go buy these. So if you want, here, I'll show you the label. So if you're an Amazon user, there's the part number. Okay. And if you're listening on the audio podcast, the brand is Home Sensei. and these are 2.5 gallon, 7.4 mils each side. So these are, the walls are 7.4 mils. Anyway, big win. Very happy. And we've talked about storage. So if you get your filament dry, that's another topic. But if you put it in a proper storage container, it will stay dry and the moisture will not penetrate because of the aluminum. Evils, that's mils as in MILS, which is the thousandths of an inch. So 7.4 mils is 7/1000ths of an inch thick. It's pretty beefy. Yeah, so Unix Carbide says milk crates stack in square 5-gallon buckets stack with much space lost. Yes, so and he put a couple of clutter credit stickers there. So these will, stack in a nice square box, and it's starting to sound like a pretty good way to go. And pretty small investment. So that's the story. Strongly recommended. Again, we'll back up the recommendation with more data, because this is one of those experiments that just is going to take a while, and we just have to give it time, especially if we want to back out that initial moisture that's in the container. Now, Doug does his experiments a little differently. So what Doug does is he weighs the whole thing. Now that's fair. And he was using rolls of filament, and he was observing rolls of filament and how much they gain water. I was using bags of desiccant that were all identical and were all dried out. So there'll be some more interesting data coming up. I'm going to have, hopefully, have Doug on the show in the not too distant future, where we could put all of our data into one place and we can talk about it. So if you guys have any questions about any of this, let me know. Yeah, Evil says that's a neat method. So the thing that you need for any of these methods is very good resolution and accuracy in the scale. So I have this pretty decently accurate 0.1 gram resolution triple beam balance, not expensive. And I think it has 2.6 kilogram capacity. So that's enough to do a pretty good job of measuring desiccants or filaments. And yes, and Evils correctly points out that it doesn't require you to open the container, which then lets more moisture in. Absolutely true. But it also measures the moisture absorbed by the container in the case of a plastic container. So the Sterilite container, or any of these plastic containers, the container itself absorbs moisture. The plastic you're looking at absorbs moisture. It also transmits the moisture by absorbing it and then emitting it on the other side. So when you measure the thing, you have to just take into account the fact that the container itself is absorbing moisture. Yeah. It's also, Evil says, it's measuring the oxygen taken up by the metal container rusting. That's true. Well, at least it sequesters the oxygen, right? So that's the latest on the dry filament quest. I'm pretty excited about it, and we'll be putting all of our Sterilite containers up on eBay, or using it for food, which is, that's kind of boring. But if you have to, you have to. So in other shop/lab news, I was back to. I've been developing a lapping process, and that lapping process involves getting to essentially gauge block surface quality over about a 3-inch diameter. So if you go back to previous videos, you'll see me developing the Toolmaker's flat, which, by the way, at this current stage of development is effectively done. But because I have another project that requires some higher quality, I'm pushing ahead. And I have here, if you're watching on the video, there's the Toolmaker's block, and it's pretty good. You know, it is it's ringable, but I could still see some pattern or some figure in the, actually that's the wrong word, in the surface, and I'm trying to get rid of that. So we continued on the long-term plan of having a 3-micron lapping station, and then having an identical 1-micron lapping station. So that is up and running, and I'm working in the 1-micron laps. Hey, Mattis is here. He says Belgian weather a couple of kilometers south of Evils is cold, dry, dark, and he estimates 10 to 15 degrees. Science. Welcome aboard, sir. Nice to see you. So the 1-micron laps, those are 6-inch diameter, inch and a little bit thick cast iron laps. They weigh just over 9 pounds each, by the way, so you can kind of imagine the physics of lapping with these things. They're coming in. They're not quite there yet. One of the things that's very annoying about the 1-micron is that it's slow. It's a 1-micron abrasive, and it's taking off materials at a far lower rate. However, if you look at you go to clean up and everything's black, that is the metal coming off, so at least you know it's working. So it's coming in. I don't think the laps are quite done yet, but they are doing a job. They did a nice job preliminarily on the Toolmaker's flat. And as you can see from the interference patterns we get from the optical flat, it's starting to look pretty good. There's a little bit of curvature there, you can see in that picture. So I'll be chasing that, and that's probably because the flats haven't landed yet. So we'll keep you posted. The surface roughness on a calibrated Mitutoyo SJ210 is reporting 0.6 micro-inch RA. And because I'm reading your mind, Dylan, presently a 4.8 micro-inch RZ, which I'm not sure if I haven't calibrated this against a known, perfect mirror surface yet to know how low this instrument actually goes. But there you go. Those are some numbers, and more on those to follow. So lapping it and doing the final push, we're probably going to involve some things like the optical pitch. So I purchased some optical pitch. I have 3D printed some kind of holders for the pitch. I know that Robin has shown some stuff that he's been doing. I have a different approach that I'm trying, but basically the optical pitch is interesting. And the guys that have been making optical mirrors and lenses for hundreds of years, they know something. So we're going to steal some of that knowledge. Also, if anybody has experience with cerium oxide and other lapping abrasives to bring something into a mirror finish, I would like to talk to you. I want to hear. I want to learn. But I believe we'll be able to bring this in for a landing in the next couple of weeks, and I'll be able to finish my project for my client. But it's all about the recipe. It's all about the process and figuring out the process. So it's going pretty good, but it's not done. Let's see. So if you guys have any questions, comments, or snide remarks, put them in the chat, either in the Discord chat, the YouTube chat, or if you want to make an audio comment, you're welcome to do that. And Mattis brought along some chips, Lay's Super Chips, deep. I don't know why they're deep, but they're sweet chili. Thank you for bringing the chips. I appreciate it. We'll have that in the after party roundtable. Outstanding. Let's see. Oh, I want to say thank you to Rye Jones. He couldn't stay for the PFG.Live, but he was in the pre-party. He made a donation of a bunch of Discord boosts to the Discord server, and we appreciate it. Thank you very much. What else? So last week, I told you guys that we were going to have a special segment with, or special show, actually, with Robin Renzetti and Tom Lipton, in which we're going to put the two of them in a virtual room. We're going to present them with a problem to solve, and they're going to work together, and they're going to solve this problem and figure out ways to solve it, and we get to watch the mental process that they go through to take a problem that's dumped into their lap and start, working it out. And I think the ability to watch somebody whose entire career is based on solving problems in the area that we're interested in, and just watch them work and watch how their brains work, scary as that may seem, is super valuable. So we instantiated the problem process is the name of the show, and we're collecting your data. So what we want from you is we want a problem statement that we're going to choose from so that we could present it to these guys. So if you head over to pfg.gg/links, all lowercase, you will find the problem process. There's a big button that says submit your problem, and it will take you over to a Google form. And it's really cool because you could enter your stuff in the Google form and it will automatically put that into a Google spreadsheet, and then I can take a look at it and we'll be able to start ranking them. I'm waiting for a date on when we're going to have the first episode, and then I will let everybody know. And the problem we work on will be picked from that list. So if you have a clever, interesting problem that you want to submit for the problem process, head over to pfg.gg/links, find the big red button that says submit your problem, and then fill out the form. It basically is going to ask for your name. And, Evils ask, it has to be clever? Well, it has to be clever to you. Don't worry. If it's not that clever, it won't go very far. It could be something practical. It could be something, a real practical problem that we or others are trying to solve. Now, I would like it to be something that's makeable, that's buildable, because maybe it's even something we can build or we can watch them build ultimately. But I won't put much more limits on it than that. So if we get 100 entries, I'm pretty sure we'll be good for the next couple of months for the problem process. So join us in making this happen. This is a two-way street, and if you have an interesting problem you want to solve, head on over and give us your entry. This should be a lot of fun, and Robin and Tom are quite interested in doing this. They're awesome educators, and they're awesome in giving back what they have gained over the years. I think that's pretty cool. If you were alive this morning, and I know I was, you probably heard about the SpaceX Starship making its landing and returning to land in its rack being held by a couple of big heavy chopsticks. And the video is absolutely worth watching, and is pretty cool. But I wanted to hear what you guys thought about that. I think that's an outstanding example of problem solving. I mean, I believe the whole concept of taking a reusable rocket, well, the concept of a reusable rocket is relatively new. The concept of the reusable rocket landing itself where it needs to be for, ease of recovery is relatively new. The application of those things to a rocket that is the largest rocket we have ever made is completely novel, and it is pretty cool. The approach that SpaceX has taken is completely different than the traditional approach that NASA has taken in the past. Yeah, Evil says, I think there's some engineers out there who are ecstatic to finally get their hands on flown hardware that's not water damaged. Yeah, that's also true. And I love the fact that they're not like scrubbing and repainting these things so they look pristine before they reuse them. That's even better. But Proteum says, Dylan says, it's wild that in the last 10 years we've gone from a relatively dead space culture to relanding massive boosters. And right. Why did we do that? Well, one of the reasons we did that is because we went from a governmental agency, and those aren't bad words, to private enterprise. And the motivations are different. The motivations are quite different. And the approach, NASA's approach is generally, you come up with a design that has a 99.9999% chance of success, and then go build and fly the hardware. And SpaceX's approach has been get to P1. Tell me if this sounds familiar. Get to P1. It only has to last 15 minutes, and then learn something from it. And the second half is critical. Learn something from it, and then get on to the next prototype and learn something from it, and keep marching. Yeah, Evil says it's also going from ICBMs to commodity hardware. Well, it's, the clever application of so-called commodity hardware, stuff that we did not have to, invent for a specific application. Stuff that's around it's wise to use that. I remember in the space shuttle program when there was a problem, they had 3 computers on the space shuttle, and one of them wasn't agreeing with the rest of them. And I remember I was at school, and the brilliant solution was, yeah, let's just reboot everything. So, even NASA legitimized the idea of, well, just turn it off and turn it on. I thought that was pretty funny. But people make fun of the brilliant explosions that SpaceX had in early testing of their systems. And it's like, no, this was planned. This was a planned explosion. This was what it was supposed to be. P1 had to last 15 minutes for us to get enough data to get to P2. That was what it was for, and they did it. And that was pretty awesome. I would like more of the engineers who solve these problems to be put on pedestals, and fewer of the corporate executives to be put on pedestals. Just let that hang for a second. And moving on. So that was the news. I love the problem solving methods that are so completely different than some of what was done in the past. I think that's the important thing. Paul says, even today, they blew up the Starship after it touched down in the water. Really? I didn't follow up on some of the other stuff. That's interesting. So the news is happening right now as we speak, so I am not completely up to date. And Paul points out that the Starlink satellites, which were also put up by SpaceX, helped provide footage all through the plasma phase. So if you have any gray hair, and I have some, you'll recall that during re-entries of manned spacecraft, they would go through the phase where they were generating so much heat that the spacecraft was covered with a plasma as they were coming in through the atmosphere, and you lost communications. And what Paul's pointing out is that they're able to get better coverage from the transmissions from the spacecraft because of the satellites, the Starlink satellites, which is fantastic. And I think it's great. So how can we use different ways of thinking? This relates to our problem, the problem process that we're going to look at. And how can you apply different ways of approaching a problem? Try something, grab something, and try it. If your first prototype only has to last 15 minutes, how would you approach the problem? Now, I know your thinking changes when your raw materials cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. All of a sudden, it's like, well, I don't want my prototype to only last 15 minutes. Absolutely. But look at what they did at SpaceX and look at the approach. I think it's pretty phenomenal. So if you haven't been following it, check it out. It's all over the intertubes. And look at it from the standpoint of what you can learn from how they are approaching the problem. I don't think, you're probably not in the business of building a rocket, but you're in the business of building something, or you wouldn't be listening or watching this podcast. Okay, so we'll throw it open to you guys. If anybody has a question, an answer, or a snarky remark, jump right in. You can go off topic. So this is open topic at this point, and we'll see if you guys have anything you want to discuss. I think we covered most of what we needed. And Dylan, I know you're here. I don't know if you heard my fusion rant about telling Fusion to go do this operation on all of these things that look the same. They're starting to do it a little bit, but not enough. Steven says that Boeing is laying off 10% of their workforce. Well, that's economics. Boeing had a problem. They tried to compete, and they failed. And now they're laying off 17,000 people. I do not like the fact that those people are getting laid off, but that's a bummer. Yeah, don't worry about it, Dylan. It's not critical. I'm sure some black belt in Autodesk Fusion will hear my comments and yell at me, and I'll get either a solution or just get yelled at, which I'm used to at this point. Oh, Tucker's typing something. So I will keep everybody posted on ongoing projects, specifically the lapping, which is coming along. We were just talking about that. We'll talk more about that in the after show, and I want to bring that in for a final landing. I'm about to pour my first pitch mold into the mold that I made, and we'll report on that. Tucker says, I just changed out all of my desiccant in the bamboo as it was sitting at 58% relative humidity. Thanks for the reminder. Already down to 37% on the Sensorian. So Tuck, when I change out my desiccant in the AMS on the bamboo, I have a little cartridge in the middle of each spool. I only use 3 of my stations if I can help it. And then in the 4th station, I have my little cylinders full of desiccant. I usually have about 3 of those in there. So that's how I have printer 1 and printer 2 set up. And those are all running PETG. And a couple of days ago, my numbers crossed 20%, which is my threshold. And I changed out all the desiccant. So cartridge in the middle of the spool, and then my 3 little cartridges in station number 4, and that number went to 7%. Just to let you know, in the AMS. So I do keep an eye on it with the Sensorian sensor. And there's a picture of Tuck's setup. Cool. Oh, by the way, I don't know if you know this, but Tuck is actually Iron Man. There, I said it. Steven says, EDM in your shop? When? ? So I love EDMs, and I've never run one. I would love to run one. I don't think there's a future in my shop for an EDM. I think the next best thing is a friend with an EDM. So I do have a friend with an EDM who happens to be in California. So we'll find out. That's a good question for him. We may have to get him on get Tom Lipton on for an update on his project. But I don't think I'm going to get an EDM. I came to a decision point sometime in the last few years where it's like either I get a bigger shop or I stop and say, this is the size shop I have to work with. And that's it. And I chose the latter. I chose to say, you know what? I have a pretty nice shop. I have a pretty big shop. I'm going to work with it. So no EDM for me. Art that makes art. Wes says, you have friends? Yes, I have 4. By the way, nice little video that you posted on your little widget that you made for your coolant lines. I appreciate that. Wes did a thing on, he found a couple of holes on a tool block. He made a 3D printed widget that picked up those 2 holes and held some of his cooling lines. I thought that was outstanding. Nice job. Michael Wan says, most of the CNCs at Carnegie Mellon's shop haven't had their coolant changed in 2 years. How do I bring it up and not be the one tasked to clean out the coolant tanks? I don't know, buddy. You might have to just submit an anonymous report. Otherwise, you're going to be the one. So see if those guys can get some funding to get a Freddy or a similar. I know there's a couple of them out there. A-Bomb has a different brand. I don't remember it. I apologize. But a cool, one of those coolant vacuums for the shop. So here's my question to you, Michael Juan. How many CNCs are in that shop? How many coolant tanks are we talking about? Because if they have 10 coolant tanks and they do not have something like a Freddy, they need to fix that. And then if they do get a Freddy, you should be the one to do it because it'll be fun. 12. They have 12 tanks. They need a system. So I would go do your homework on these machines, these Freddys, coolant, vacuum, filtering, blah, blah, blah. And go say, plop that on somebody's desk and say, we need one of those because we have 12 coolant tanks. And you got to be a little careful, because if you make the case that, failure to maintain these coolant tanks is going to result in bad things happening, it may go the other way, and they may say, "Oh, really? We'll get it from 12 down to 2," which is not the way you want to go. Yeah, and DBX has also a mixing system for the refill. I have an opinion about that, DBX, that might differ differ from you. The modern coolants, and by modern I mean I use Qualichem 250 C. That's my coolant. Qualichem XC, which is Extreme Cut 250 C. Love that coolant. I use it in the mill, the lathe, the saw, the grinder. Okay. That stuff mixes no problem. Like, in other words, you don't need any fancy dancy procedure or equipment to mix it. Your point, I believe, is one of those widgets. Oh, there we go. Dylan says a dosatron. I've never heard of it. I'll check it out. But what that does is you put one hose in the coolant and one hose for the water. When you turn the valve on, you get 7% dilution, or whatever you set it to. That is a labor saver. But my point is, you could literally fill the coolant tank with water and then dump in the right amount of coolant, a gross fill. And there's a lot of wives' tales about, oh, you can't do that. It'll never mix. You have to do it in the right order, under a full moon, during a west wind, between the temperatures. That stuff, the XC250C, as an example only, just mixes awesomely well. I routinely pour concentrate. I'll pour water in, and then I'll pour concentrate in, and I'll run the pump, and I'm done. Never a problem. Dosatron, interesting. Constant concentration, regardless of pressure. That's what I aspire to. Constant concentration, regardless of pressure. Moving on. So, anyway, there you go. I look forward to hearing, more about what goes on at Carnegie Mellon there, Michael Juan. And did I ever connect you with your opposite number at MIT, Dan? Because if I haven't, we should do that. I think I talked about it once. All right. Nice. Okay. So go back in the videos, in the PFG Lives, and there was a whole episode where I interviewed Dan Gilbert, not Gelbert, people. Dan Gilbert at MIT, and he runs the Laboratory for Manufacturing Productivity shop, and it was awesome. You guys should talk, and I'll get you his number if you bug me. But bug me, okay? Well, we're coming up on the top of the hour. We had a good time. We got everything done. Everybody has remained unincarcerated. Is that correct? Yeah, so far. And that means it was a blatant success. So we'll be back next week, and I'll have one more week's worth of data for you. And then we may go to longer periods of time on measuring those desiccants. Are you still affecting the flatness of your lapping workpieces? Oh, you mean the toolmaker's flat with the 1 micron? Oh, so the answer is yes. Absolutely, the 1 micron lapping is affecting the flatness, but right now, I'm still bringing the 1 micron flats into flat. So we're not. So just to recap that, when you make a pair of laps, right? Go back, see previous videos, and you lap them together. You then need a piece of work to lap, and then you measure the work. and the work tells you what you need to do to the laps. Okay, so we did that to good effect on the 3-micron laps, and everything was hunky-dory. I have to redo that now on the 1-micron laps. So if you look at the picture that I posted in the thumbnail, or even right here, you'll see, no, there's a little bit of curvature there, which I put that curvature back into the toolmaker's flat, and now that's teaching me what I have to do to the laps. Does that make sense? So it's kind of like the Whitworth method, except not really. All right. So have a great week, everybody. Have fun in your shop. Learn something. Teach somebody something. And we'll see you guys next week. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Come on over to the Discord. Join us. We'll be in the After Party Roundtable as soon as we click off. In the meantime, get flat and stay flat. And we'll see you next week. Take care.